Let me begin by saying this. You and I are in a battle. We are all involved in a spiritual conflict that transcends everything else in life. It is not a battle against flesh and blood. It is a battle against the forces of evil, against principalities and powers, against the rulers of this dark world. It is a battle that we on our own cannot win. Let me tell you this, you will lose this fight if you try to fight it in your own strength, with your own wisdom, your own understanding. We live in a world that tells us to stand up for ourselves, to defend our rights, to make sure we never back down. The world says, fight for what you deserve, don't let anyone push you around. We've all heard it, often even from the people we love and respect. But what if I told you that the battle you're facing is not one you were ever meant to fight alone? What if I told you that the battles you face, whatever they may be, are already won, not by your effort, but by the hand of God? What we fail to recognize in our pride, in our self-reliance, is that God is the one who fights for us. We must abandon the illusion that we can handle it on our own. Too many believers today are walking in defeat because they are trying to do what only God can do. They are trying to win battles in their own strength, with their own resources, their own strategies, and they are losing. I don't care how talented you are, how much wisdom you have, or how strong you think you are. You cannot win this battle by yourself. There is a fundamental truth that every believer must come to grips with, and it is this: the victory is God's, the battle is the Lord's. This truth is not just a mere theological concept or a nice saying to put on a coffee mug. It is the foundation of how we live, how we face trial, how we walk through life. I think about the Israelites standing before the Red Sea with the Egyptian army closing in behind them. What were they supposed to do? They were trapped. There was no way out. In their fear and panic, they began to cry out, "What have you done to us, bringing us out here to die?" But God, in His mercy, did not leave them to fend for themselves. He did not tell them to arm themselves and fight. No. He told them, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Think about that. The Israelites were given a command: be still. Don't try to solve this with your own might. Don't try to come up with a plan or a strategy. Just be still. Trust in the God who brought you here. Trust in the God who is able to do what you cannot do. The battle is not yours to fight. It is God's. Now, it wasn't that the Israelites were passive in their lives. God had given them many commands, and they were to obey Him in everything. But when it came to this moment, God was saying, "This is my battle, and I will fight for you." You and I must have that same mentality when we face struggles in our lives. Whether it's a personal trial, a struggle with sin, a conflict with a loved one, or a burden that seems too heavy to bear. When we face these challenges, we need to understand that it is not our battle to fight. It is God's. You know what happened to the Israelites, don't you? The Red Sea parted, the water stood up like walls, and the people walked through on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to follow, the waters came crashing down upon them, and they were drowned. God fought for them. God made a way where there was no way. God did the impossible. That is what He wants to do for you. That is what He has already promised to do for His people. But so often, we think we can do it better ourselves. We think we know what's best. We think that if we just try harder, if we just put in more effort, if we just manipulate the situation a little bit, we'll get the results we want. But let me tell you, that is the way of destruction. The way of peace, the way of victory, the way of true strength is to surrender to God, to allow him to fight the battle for you. Think of David. Here he was, a young shepherd boy standing before a giant named Goliath. The odds were completely against him. There was no way a boy with a slingshot could defeat a seasoned warrior like Goliath. But David knew something that many people don't know. The battle is not about you. It's not about your ability. It's about God's glory. It's about his strength, not yours. When David stood before that giant, he said, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." David's confidence was not in his own abilities. His confidence was in the fact that God was going to fight the battle. The battle belonged to God. And what did God do? He struck down the giant with one small stone. One stone thrown by a boy, and the giant fell. Why? Because the battle was the Lord's. Too many times, we feel like we have to face the giants of our lives alone. We look at our problems, our struggles, and we think we are too small, too weak, too insignificant to overcome them. We start strategizing, planning, stressing. But let me tell you, the victory doesn't depend on your ability to fight. It depends on God's power to save, to deliver, to triumph over evil. We need to stop fighting in our own strength. We need to stop striving, stop manipulating, stop trying to control every outcome. We need to trust God and let him fight the battle for us. But I know what some of you are thinking. That sounds nice, but what about when God doesn't seem to act immediately? What about when I'm in the midst of a battle and it seems like God is silent? What about when I've prayed and prayed and prayed and nothing happens? Listen to me, you must trust in God's timing. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. We are finite beings and we cannot see the big picture. God sees the end from the beginning. He knows exactly what is needed and he knows exactly when it needs to happen. When God is silent, when he seems distant, it is not a sign of his abandonment. It is a sign of his sovereignty. He knows exactly what he is doing. Consider Job. Job lost everything, his wealth, his health, his family. His friends came and accused him, telling him it was because of his sin, and yet Job clung to God. Even when he didn't understand, even when everything seemed to be falling apart, Job said, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Job knew that the battle was not his to fight. The battle was the Lord's. And in the end, God restored Job and gave him more than he had before. There are going to be moments in your life when the battle will seem long. You'll feel weary. You'll feel overwhelmed. You'll wonder if God is really working on your behalf. But remember this, God is always at work. He never slumbers nor sleeps. He is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating all things according to his perfect will. And let me tell you this, there is no greater victory than the victory that God wins for you. The victory he brings will never fade, will never disappoint, and will always bring glory to his name. When God fights for you, you can be sure that the outcome will be exactly what he intends. It will be perfect. And I want to challenge you. The next time you face a battle, do not look to your own strength, your own plans, or your own wisdom. Look to God. Trust him. Cry out to him. Be still and know that he is God. You are not in this fight alone. God is on your side. God is your refuge and strength and ever-present help in times of trouble. He is the one who holds the victory. He is the one who will bring you through. You see, there are some things in this life that we can't understand. There are battles that will stretch us, that will push us to the brink, but we must trust in God. We must remember that He is the one who fights for us. And when the battle is over, we will be able to look back and say, it was God. It was God who fought for me. It was God who delivered me. And it is God who gets the glory.
So stop trying to fight your own battles. Let God fight for you. And when He does, you will see His power, His glory, and His goodness in ways you never imagined. And in the end, when all is said and done, you will stand victorious because the battle was never yours to fight. It was always His. We are involved in spiritual warfare that we cannot win on our own. The battle is not ours to fight. It is God's, and He alone has the power to bring victory. Even when God seems silent or distant in our struggles, we must trust in His perfect timing and sovereign plan. His ways are higher than ours, and He is always working behind the scenes for our good. We must stop relying on our own strength, wisdom, and strategies. True victory comes when we surrender control and allow God to fight for us, recognizing that His power is greater than our own. God's victory brings glory when God fights our battles and brings us through trials. The victory is always His. We are called to trust Him and give Him glory for His faithfulness and power in delivering us from our struggles. The battle belongs to God. This is not a mere slogan or a catchy phrase that we recite to make ourselves feel better in the midst of our struggles. It is a profound, life-changing truth that has been revealed throughout the pages of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation. It is the truth that, if fully understood and embraced, can transform how we approach life, our trials, and our victories. The reality of spiritual warfare is something we cannot ignore. We live in a fallen world, and as believers, we are caught in the middle of a cosmic battle. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, reminds us that we are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers over this present darkness. This battle is not against human enemies, not against the people who oppose us, but against the spiritual forces that seek to destroy God's work in our lives. It is a battle of the highest order, a battle for the souls of men and for the glory of God. And yet, despite this formidable reality, we often forget that we do not have to fight this battle on our own. We have a God who is all-powerful, a God who is sovereign over everything that happens, a God who is mightier than any enemy we may face. The battle belongs to Him. He is the one who fights for us, who defends us, and who ensures that we emerge victorious. But this truth, though simple, is often one of the most difficult to accept, especially in a world that prizes self-sufficiency, independence, and personal strength. We are taught to fight for ourselves, to stand up for our rights, to defend our honor and our dignity. And while there is a place for standing firm in our faith and taking action where necessary, there is a deeper truth that we must grasp. We are not capable of winning the battle by our own strength. We have a tendency to rely on ourselves in times of trouble. We rely on our intellect, our resources, our strategies, our plans. We think that if we just work harder, plan more effectively, or use the right tactics, we can overcome the challenges that come our way. And when we fail, we become frustrated, defeated, and often we begin to doubt ourselves and even question God's goodness. But this mindset reveals a lack of understanding about the nature of the battle we are in and the power of the one who fights on our behalf. The Bible is clear that the victory is not ours to claim. The battle belongs to God. We see this truth demonstrated over and over again throughout Scripture. Take, for example, the story of the Israelites facing the mighty Egyptian army at the Red Sea. The situation was dire. They were trapped with no way of escape. The Red Sea was in front of them, and Pharaoh's army was closing in behind them. The people cried out in fear, thinking that they were doomed. But in that moment, God told Moses, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." God did not tell the Israelites to arm themselves for battle. He did not tell them to strategize or come up with a plan. He simply told them to stand firm and trust in His power. And what did God do? He parted the Red Sea, and the Israelites walked through on dry land while the Egyptian army was drowned in the waters. The victory was not won by the Israelites, it was won by God. The battle belonged to Him, and He fought it on their behalf. This is the pattern we see again and again throughout Scripture, whether it was the walls of Jericho falling at the sound of trumpets, or David defeating the giant Goliath with a simple stone, or the people of God conquering their enemies when they were outnumbered and outmatched. The victory always belonged to God. He fought for His people. He fought on their behalf, and He brought the victory. But this is not just an Old Testament truth. In the New Testament, we see the same message. Jesus, in His earthly ministry, demonstrated time and again that He had the power to overcome all the forces of darkness. He cast out demons, healed the sick, raised the dead, and ultimately He triumphed over sin and death through His death and resurrection. When He hung on the cross, He declared, "It is finished." The battle was won. The victory was secured. The enemy was defeated. And while we may still experience battles in our lives, the ultimate victory has already been accomplished by Christ. As believers, we are called to rest in that victory. We are called to trust in the one who has already overcome the world. Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." The battle is already won. And yet we continue to face struggles. We continue to face challenges. We continue to experience the weight of sin, suffering, and opposition. But the victory has been secured. The battle belongs to God. What does this mean for us then? It means that we can stop trying to fight battles that were never meant to be ours to fight. It means that we can surrender our struggles to God, knowing that He is more than capable of handling them. It means that we can rest in His sovereignty and His power, trusting that He will fight for us. We do not have to strive in our own strength. We do not have to rely on our own wisdom or understanding. We do not have to be afraid or anxious. The battle belongs to God, and He is in control. But this does not mean that we are passive. It does not mean that we simply sit back and do nothing. No, we are called to actively trust in God, to seek His guidance, and to walk in obedience to His word. We are called to pray, to worship, to stand firm in the faith, and to fight against sin and temptation. But when it comes to the battles we cannot win on our own, when it comes to the challenges that are too big, too overwhelming, and too beyond our ability to control, we are called to let go and let God fight for us. There's a tremendous freedom that comes with understanding that the battle belongs to God. When we stop trying to control every outcome, when we stop trying to fix every problem in our own strength, we can experience peace, we can experience rest, we can experience the assurance that God is working on our behalf. He is fighting for us. He is fighting for His glory and for our good.